Good morning, good evening, guten Tag. So happy to be here. Let me get everything in order here. Remind me to write a smaller bio next time. It's so hard to hear yourself. I'll just give a little bit of background on the O'Keeffe Museum before I dive in. We have a museum located in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is on the unceded lands of the Pueblo people here. And we have a research center that is also here in Santa Fe, a library, archives, and we also steward 2 historic homes. I say this also because we are a smaller team. We have about well, I guess we're a medium-sized museum. We have about 100 people that work for the museum, though we do not have developers on site. It's a very small digital team. So I'm going to talk about this from a non-academic, but also a place of a museum that doesn't have a lot of development resources. So hopefully that speaks to some of you of what can be done with few resources, particularly around development. So our mission is really around, we are the only single artist museum dedicated to a female artist in the United States. So Georgia O'Keeffe is a female American artist here. And our mission is to celebrate the spirit, art, and independent spirit of Georgia O'Keeffe. But amongst that, also our organizational goal, one of them is to provide accurate information and resources to local and global audiences. And I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but I think it's really important for us when we think about these new kinds of experiments of how does it really fit in with our mission and vision of our organization. Part of this in terms of digital strategy and product strategy is that we have a digital infrastructure, which I'll call Linking O'Keeffe, which we've been building up over time, first from publishing our collections and really moving towards more access. This is fits with our previous discussion, previous speaker, well, because we are doing it in linked open data, using linked art, and plan to expand that for the digital catalog Raisonné. So I'll just focus on the mission here. Linking O'Keeffe provides access to a holistic and diverse set of resources about Georgia O'Keeffe as an artist, going beyond our museum's collection. So the key is that we've always built our infrastructure to not be specifically about our museum's collection, which has led us to a project we are actively working on right now. And I'm going to do a shout out for for the excellent technical partners that I've had for the last 5 or 6 years at Design for Context. They're amazing. And so when we approach this, we've been like really expanding into, if you don't know what a catalog Raisonné is, it's kind of one of the most orthodox publications in art history. It is the systematic cataloging of an artist's work over time. There is already a print publication for Georgia O'Keeffe that was published in 1999, which is quite a while ago. And what we've been doing is moving this linked open data and linked art infrastructure towards having, on the right, you'll see that has, that's a work from the Amon Carter Museum. It links out to that. And we have historic exhibitions. So that's had checklists that include works that are outside of the O'Keeffe collection. And then we kind of pushed in a new direction. This launched in November of, since we have a data set of this one artist's work, is really having data visualization and having that as a new way to explore, which has been very successful in terms of people understanding, coming to me and saying that they understand that they didn't realize she had such a breadth of work. So these are the kind of things we're doing, and we are actively working on the full re-envisioning the catalog Raisonné now. Hopefully I'll be talking about that next year. But always thinking past the next step, really think what the provocation is can this reimagined version of a catalog Raisonné serve as a key context for accessible, accurate information through AI? And in thinking about this, I think about the life cycles of how we've done a lot of user research. And when we gave, thinking about the roadmap progression, when we gave access to information about O'Keeffe collections, everyone was happy, our users were happy. historic checklists, which I couldn't get anywhere else, even more happy. Even thinking about like the digital catalog Raisonné, which will have current ownership and current artwork details. People are really, our users are really excited about that. And, you know, when we got into the data visualization, that was more, well, we see where you're going, but they needed to, a lot of people needed to see it to understand like how it could be an exploratory way. And I have to say that in anecdotal discussions right now, when I just run down to the research center and talk about AI, I don't always get the best reception. So I don't think I need to tell this group why that is. Particularly with scholars and researchers, there's a concern around accuracy, hallucination, theft of their copyrighted work, a devaluing of their work, and then of course that a lot of these large language models are owned by these large companies that aren't very transparent. So there's a good reason to be skeptical about all of this. And of course, sometimes our computer lead us astray. So if we have any fans of the American version of The Office, this is a 2007 episode where the lead character, Michael Scott, puts his full trust in GPS, even though there's a lake in front of him. So, you know, knowing that we also don't want to just put all of our trust in this. So how do we see the opportunity, but not that? So with all of this, you know, a lot of our work is often driven by what user desires are, a user-centered path. But we want to like things like, how do we really think, why would we consider this right now? But I think that we've all talked about how there are potentials for new types of engagements. So some of the ideas, could conversational prompts lower the barrier for access to information, particularly if we can give back answers that to people that don't necessarily know the exact way of asking for something from our resources? And does it provide a space for questions and engender new kinds of relationships based on dialogue instead of information sharing? So this idea that I'd really like to put to the test more of, does even just changing the way that we allow questions, even if it is to an AI, that does it change the way people are responding to museums? And I'm going to hat tip and thank my colleague Dale Cronkite for that second hypothesis, which I think is really interesting. He's also our conservator, and there's tons of ideas that we have around how AI and conservation with humans in the loop. Really looking much into some of the data around specialized human verified resources. This is the unexpected winners of the ChatGPT generative AI revolution. When looking at the near magical output of ChatGPT and other LLMs, one would expect the profession of a writer or a blogger to be demonetized and the value of the content owned by the publishing houses diminished. However, the reality is quite the opposite. The value of high quality human generated content, especially content rich in verified facts, just increased exponentially. So I love this idea that if we think about this, is that actually that unique knowledge, that specialized knowledge that we are putting together with the Catalogue Raisonné can be of high value as things move forward. And additionally, these issues like composition, transparency, documentation, and representativeness. We're already thinking about these topics when we put together the digital catalog Raisonné, and how do we apply these within generative AI as well. So these issues are a special concern in scholarly and cultural domain, yay, where transparency, equity, and respect for cultural particularity and expression are important. For research purposes, results need to be reproducible. In this context, it is interesting to see the emergence of several models specialized in these domains and some attention to the more careful curation of training and tuning data. We can expect to see more activity here across scholarly and cultural interests. That's by Lorcan Dempsey. And I think what we're really, one of the places that I'm looking is medical, where it's high stakes. And we know that with EU, we have things high risk, really art historical here, probably a medium to low risk, but really looking towards those higher risks to think about how we can use our data and transparency around that, even in our domains. Also, shout out to scholarly academic libraries, which are doing excellent work on this. I would highly recommend watching all of the videos that came from the Center for the CNI conference that happened in December. So based on this, I just wanted to show, as a practitioner, like sometimes, and I'm also a seeing is believing, just some really initial experiments. So one of the first experiments, and I'm going to thank Vince Boise at AWS for brainstorming and prototyping. Vince prototyped a using AWS, and this is a Bedrock, using knowledge base and embedding. So really looking at what a local context looked like. Here, the local context was only our website, and using those embeddings against larger language models. And just these initial experiments, we looked out there. Where is Misty of the painting, Misty a Memory? So again, didn't say that it was a George O'Keeffe painting. It answers very well this based on the details provided in the context. The painting Misty a Memory by George O'Keeffe depicts a volcano, Misty, near Arequipa, Peru, and then talks about the painting a little bit. This is a great answer, actually, and this is bringing some information from our local context, and these resources at the bottom go to our local context. But it's also pulling in other things. We actually don't have in our data set that it's near that place in Peru. So it's actually adding to that. When I just compared this to a general no context, GPT 3.5, when we were experimenting with this, at that point, it didn't even know the painting. But one of the things that is really important about all these experiments is to take away the concepts and the ideas, because things are changing so quickly. So when I did a test this last week, it knew the painting now. ChatGPT-4 knew the painting, knew it was in the Andes in Peru, and this is without context. So really thinking about how this is going to be a push-pull in terms of what's out there and how we can add value with our local facts that we bring online. Just one more test on that, just showing how Perplexity AI brought it up again. All of these are like things that I could just put in, and it actually did an even better job. The painting, Misty and Memories, and artwork, gave some details about it, gave sources, sourced the information. So I think that this is the kind of format, what we see in Perplexity, that we'll want to aspire to, with sources, with where the information came from, that kind of thing. So then, as a separate experiment, and this is something that's easy for me to do without any code. I didn't need any help from a developer, although I will give a shout out and a thanks to John Gordy at the NGADC for his conversations about this and shared experiences. We did some experiment with custom GPT. And if you don't know what this is yet, it's really where you can put in instructions and, again, a local knowledge base that you can ask it to refer to. And just doing some experiments here. Who owns Black Cross, New Mexico? It's at the Art Institute. It got that right. What else did the Art Institute own? I had asked it in its instructions to always give the title, the date, and the Catalogue Raisonné number. Imagine in the future that this would link back to the Catalogue Raisonné record, and give some details about it. I also asked it to sort by Catalogue Raisonné number, and it could never get that. But of course, the Art Institute has more than 6 pieces, and there's more than 6 pieces in our database. So it does very interestingly well, and then just stops. It's incomplete. So I think it's getting the same one there. Let's see here. So then we asked where cow skull, red, white, and blue, what year it was done. It got it right. Who owns it? So I don't have to specify, follow up, and it gets that right as well. It's owned by the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And then I started asking questions about topics. Did she paint boats? That kind of thing. And then later on, and I'll show that this towards failure, how many artworks feature Paternal. So again, it would have to be a local database to know, or a local context to start getting an idea of this. It searched and it searched and it searched. And if you see, this is taking like a minute. And finally, it came back saying it had no idea. And right after that, it went to failure. So, but again, I don't want to get too hung up on this because this space is moving very quickly. And oddly enough, when I said to refresh, it actually gave a great answer. And so just the refresh brought it up. So just really interesting ideas. And what, again, I think these things are changing so quickly that you might ask, well, why do experiments like this now? But also, it also shows to a wider audience, particularly within my museum, about, well, what the potential is if we could get the details out, and knowing then what those guardrails of, we want sources, we want some kind of human evaluation, that kind of thing. So just looking at this, like, again, looking at this custom GPT against general GPT, what year was Cow Skull, red, white, and blue? Well, actually, general GPT did that pretty well too. Who owns Black Cross, New Mexico? Actually, general GPT very confidently said it was at the wrong location. So that was interesting. And then looking at Perplexity AI, it got it right. Just really interesting to kind of get a sense for these things. So the key takeaway from just those kind of just experiments is, again, it helps us all know what the possibilities are and what we need to fix. It's temperamental, it's incomplete, quite promising. And as things and change and options for more control, and I'm sure that I could get that if I was spending more money right now, but doing it as a kind of do-it-yourself kind of quick way, this will help me understand as we spend more money. And we need to work with a system that has sources, evaluation of responses, and links to resources. This picture on the side here, I tried to get it to create an image that spelled unlikely right about 100 times. And then I realized that maybe I should give it up. And it's actually interesting how, even though the prompt has the exact spelling, it just totally got it wrong. So, but as we think about the catalog Raisonné, the digital catalog Raisonné, we've actually been thinking about a lot of these things anyway. Looking at folklore scholar William Westerman described how scholarly knowledge production is not distinguished from traditional and anecdotal knowledge by a level of accuracy and truth or professionally trained academic expertise involved in its production, but by the verifiability of statements, the strength of evidence, and the transparency of which such knowledge is generated. So as we move forward, and again, a lot of work is happening in the academic space, verifiability, evidence, and transparency are really key for us supporting this generative scholarly ecosystem and using the its key principles for the catalog Raisonné. And in thinking about, like, how does this change the role of the catalog Raisonné, that it is more of a foundation, more of a platform, you might say, that many people here probably know the work of Nuria Rodriguez Ortega. And I love this from a recent, the Techno Concepts for the Cultural Field paper that she wrote. I consider it essential to explore the possibilities of seeing that AI offers, while bearing in mind that it's a diffracted vision. It is more interesting to think that AI helps us to see differently than to think that it helps us see more and better. It is in this different seeing where, in my view, lies the heuristic and epistemological potential of these technologies. So I think as we approach this again, how do we see that this is just an addition of how people use the catalog Raisonné and how it serves as a platform for discovery and seeing differently. And with that, I'll draw from another older paper from Rodriguez Ortega. In looking at a wider set of participants in value creation, Rodriguez Ortega proposes a hybrid source of knowledge among domain experts and other voices within an interstitial context. That is, open spaces where institutions, social communities, individuals, and cultural and political agents interact, debate, and negotiate on how and where to identify shared cultural values and new forms of legitimacy. So here I think that actually what I would argue that as we open up to other sources, that the Catalogue Raisonné is one source among other sources of LLMs. I would like those to be open LLMs with source materials, with provenance of data, of course. But as we open this up, I would argue that this actually helps us within these contexts to go beyond what just the Catalogue Raisonné is and really open it up to new forms of opinions and voices. So this really gets me to the point of thinking about bias differently. So I think that as we talk about all these safeguards that we want, how do we also think about LLMs, if they're the right ones, and if we're pairing up with the right places? Is it possible that LLMs are less biased than information only sourced from our own museums? Because we are already like hyper curating things and putting things out there. So I think that all these sources are biased, but if the more that we have, as long as we can get to data provenance and openness, can this actually include a broader set of voices from across the internet in our digital art history? Probably not, but it's an interesting thought to interrogate. So that's where I'll leave it for now. Hopefully you got something out of these just thoughts and provocations.